Absolutely.
And so that is a very entrepreneurial university. And I would request Martin to spend a few minutes to tell how is it different. And you see how far Martin is. Oh, Chalmers at Gothenburg, and here 13 hours flight. Oh, down to Lahore. And Zan is here somewhere in Peshawar. So we have people from England, from Dubai, and many people from Australia and US might join in few minutes. And you know what? What he's doing? He's doing amazing things. He's teaching in a university. He's teaching primary school students. Wow. He's doing research, a lot of papers. And so these are his words, if he doesn't mind, but I will be sharing these meaningless puppet and one-eyed schools. So these three components solve three different problems. The school of meaninglessness, he'll talk. Well, I request him to talk. The puppet, the one-eyed school is a prison. Wow. At a time when too many students feel that the school is a prison, a kind of 12-year sentence where they are sentenced or kept in protection. Oy. And a sahab from Dubai, like he said, our kids, what are we doing with them? And these are the books of Martin. He has been working for schools and kids. He'll be talking about what he's trying to do. So that was a quick introduction, which we try to do for our guests to give them a welcome, warm welcome. And so over to my friend Martin. Thank you very much. Zan, thank you very much. We have Huzafa from Balwal, Hamid from Peshawar, Sajad Hussain, Usman Khan, Zainullah Sahab, zara salam kar lein. Zainullah, can you speak? Can you say welcome with me to Martin? Zan, unmute yourself. Zan Sahab, can you unmute? We have some Abdul Salam from Somalia. Somalia. Martin, we have from Somalia. Wow, Africa. So many continents, your words will be spreading across various people are students. Most of the people, they are, you know, the national poet of Pakistan, Iqbal, who did his PhD from Germany, and he died in 1930. He said, अपनी दुनिया, I will translate, अपनी दुनिया पैदा कर अगर जिंदों में है. If you are a living person, then create your own destiny. Don't be a borrower and don't be a beggar. Go and find your own destiny. Can create something. You know, he talked about effectuation 100 years ago. He said, "Jahan e taza ki afkar e taza se hai namu." If you want to make a fresh world, bring fresh ideas. You can't make a fresh world with money and buildings, infrastructure. Building infrastructure come later. Bring fresh ideas. So we have another Lukman. So over to Sajad. Sajad is from UK, I think. So over to Martin. Thank you very much. Can you allow him to share his slides, Martin?
Yes,
Yes.
let's see. I think I can.
Yes, sir. You
Let's
can.
see. Yes, I can. And yeah, can you see my slides now?
Yes, sir. We can.
Great. So thank you so much for inviting me. I feel very welcome with this very good introduction and very personal. And it feels special for me. I got to know some of you through Sign, who invited me to WhatsApp group where we have had discussions for what is it, a year or more, I think. So I feel connected in a certain way to the Pakistani community in entrepreneurship education. I have prepared to talk a little bit about something that I call work-learn balance. And this is a concept that can bring higher quality, efficiency, meaning, and purpose in life. So this is the overarching concept that I will try to base this presentation on. I work at Chalmers, University of Technology in Sweden, 3 days a week, and 2 days a week I work with method development at a company I started 10 years ago that builds a system called LoopMe. So I'm a researcher, I'm an educator, but I am also an entrepreneur 2 days a week, building this tool that has a lot of customers, primarily in Sweden, but also in some other countries, or maybe many other countries. Not yet Pakistan, but who knows what will happen in the future. My teaching is in entrepreneurship. I also coach our entrepreneurs we have at Chalmers. My research is about, it started out as being about becoming entrepreneurial, how to make people more entrepreneurial. But it has a few other topics have been added over the years. I started doing research 15 years ago, and that was after 10 years of working as an entrepreneur full-time in the transport industry in Europe. I also write books for teachers, and I have this IT tool, LoopMe, that I will not talk so much about it, but I will show a little bit about it because it is connected to my research quite a lot. So I prepared about 45 minutes. Let's see how long it takes. And first I will talk a little bit about this concept I call work-learn balance. And then I will go into education, how to get a good balance in education. And then the third topic is how to get a good balance in working life. How do we get entrepreneurial employees? And then I will finish off by asking this question: why is work-learn balance so difficult? So that is what I will talk about, more or less. But before we start, I just wanted to show you this slide. Basically, it illustrates that all I'm going to talk about today is available in article format as well. So I have an article on work-learn balance, which you see down below there. And I sent these slides to Professor Qureshi, so hopefully he can send it out to all of you, so you will get all the slides. And then 2 other articles that are describing many of the concepts here. One about comparing experiential approaches to entrepreneurship in education, and another article about this research method that I call designed action sampling, which helps people to become more entrepreneurial. A little bit more practice-oriented way to present this is this. So these are the 2 books I've written for teachers. One about the value-creating student to the left, and one book about the scientific teacher to the right. And I put English versions of these 2 books on my blog, bcplist.com/book or /DAS. And then all this is balanced by this IT tool, the digital tool I built, which is my main research tool. It's called LoopMe, and you can read about it on loopme.io. And also, before I get started with explaining work-learn balance, all of my research is quite solution-oriented, but there are problems that this research solves. So, and like Shahid said before, the first problem is this: some students experience meaningless school. They don't feel that school motivates them. Maybe they don't even feel that school is for them at all. And then for them, we have researched a new pedagogy that engages them more in depth. Then the second problem is that some teachers, or actually quite many teachers, experience what I call marionette school. Teachers who don't have control over their work or their work environment or their development efforts in schools. And for them, we have researched a new scientific method that helps them take back control over their profession. And then the third problem is school leaders. It's related to the managers of educational institutions. And what they experience, I have called that one-eyed school. They simply have difficulties seeing what happens in their organization in depth. And for them, we have researched this new IT tool that strengthens their visibility in school development. So I will. It's good to know that I will not look at the chat while I speak. So if something is written there that I should, would you need my attention, somebody needs to speak up. But I will read later on, of course. But to keep writing in it, it's nice because then I can read later on. So meaningless school is connected to this problem. Can you say which picture is which? Hospital, school, or prison? This is quite difficult. Isn't it funny that when we design prisons, we design them in more or less the same way as we design hospitals and schools? And the problem connected to this is what do we do with all students who feel that school is like a prison and then fail to establish themselves on the labor market or even in life? This is a big problem in Sweden, and I believe it's quite a big problem in many other countries as well. Young people who don't feel that what society offers is for them. So with that background, I would like to go into discussing what is work-learn balance. And I will start with a little video with no sound. So when we have a lot of emphasis on learning, but almost no emphasis on creating value for others, we are in the education system. When we have a lot of emphasis on creating value for others, but no emphasis almost on learning, we are in working life. And when we have a good balance between our own learning and creating value for others, I prefer to label this that we are being entrepreneurial. Or to say that we have achieved a better work-learn balance. And work-learn balance, so I define this as a situation of good balance between our own learning and creating value for others. When we have this, we often feel a higher sense of meaning and purpose in life. And this makes us become more motivated, more engaged, and more diligent. Where work is when we do stuff for others now and we get paid through salary, through or invoice or appreciation. And when we learn, it's a preparation for future work, and what we get in return is grades, points, degrees, etc. So this balance, if we have it, it results in a lot of things that we appreciate: quality, efficiency, learning, new solutions. And I've seen that this balance works on students. They learn more in depth. It also works on teachers. They reach more students when they have this balance. It works on employees. It might even work for organizations, countries, products, services, policy. It seems that this is something deeply human, a feeling of being more alive when you do things for others and you learn and develop from it at the same time. But how is it? Well, in education, we have this imbalance. All is about learning, and rarely do the students get to create value for others, apart from themselves and the teacher. And when teachers come and look at this work component, if somebody has some work component, it is regarded as very unacademic, and it is kicked away from the equation completely, in many cases. There are exceptions, which I have studied a lot, but this is the norm in many countries. In working life, we have the opposite imbalance. It's all about work and no learning, or very little learning. And when we come and kick away the learning box here, the boss often says, "Who can we invoice for our learning?" No one. And then that box is kicked away. Work, work, work. So that is what I mean by work-learn balance. And now let's go on and look at how to get balance in education. So if we look at this situation of imbalance, what we add here is something that I have come to call value creation pedagogy. Learning through creating value for others now. 7 words, and it took actually 7 years to get to these words. So first, after 4 years, I ended up with 4 words: learning through creating value. And then people misunderstood me. They thought it was about learning through creating value for yourself. And then I had to spend a couple of years to research 2 or 3 more words for others. And now even to do it now. So yeah, that's how slow we are in academia sometimes, but yeah, maybe it's worth the wait. So what, how is this defined? Well, the short version, learning through creating value for others, but there is a longer version. Let students learn by applying their knowledge and skills to try to create something of value to at least one external stakeholder outside their group, class, or school or university. So, oh, sorry, yeah. So it's still, the purpose is still to learn knowledge and skills. So we don't change the purpose of education. So this is a means to reach this purpose in a better way with a higher degree of engagement. It's a creative exercise. We have create in this definition here. We need to have an external stakeholder involved one way or another. And we want it to be outside their group, class, or school, university. And in that last line is actually a progression model, because we can start within the class, but outside our own group. And then in the second step, we still stay within the school or university, but we go outside our class, maybe help younger people. And then in the third level, we go outside our school or university. And then we have the most engaging situation for the students, but also the most challenging situation for the teachers. So this is something that can be done in all ages, from preschool to primary education, to secondary education, to higher education, to adult learning, adult education. And I've seen examples of it on all levels. When we say value, it is important to discuss before we go on, what is value, for whom is value created, and why. And because if we look at this from an entrepreneurship perspective, people would immediately assume that we are talking about creating economic value for oneself. That is the most common perspective to take in entrepreneurship. Whether we like it or not, that's how it's often interpreted. So with this model, I wanted to show that what we are talking about here is actually 10 different perspectives. We can take 5 different perspectives on creating value for others, and we can take 5 different perspectives on creating value for ourselves. This is also just a simplification. You can see a link down here. What is value? A framework for analyzing and facilitating entrepreneurial value creation. And in that article, I go through a couple of centuries of literature, not all of it, of course, but some selected parts around what humanity has written about value, because we have written a lot about this. This means a lot to us. Here are examples of value creation pedagogy, and they are taken from my book about the value creating student. And this book, as I said, it's available on my blog. So I mean, I've been doing research for about a decade to get to this list of examples involving thousands of teachers. And then I try to categorize the examples into getting started, taking the next steps, and then in the third step, professional students who remain at school. They carry out a profession from classroom, from the school. Of course, they can go out and do it, but it's not like vocational education or apprenticeship education where you go to a workplace and you take a job and learn that profession by being on a workplace. This is something that happens in the classroom, totally integrated with classical pedagogical activities on all levels of education. So if you have a classical chemistry course on a university or in secondary education, you can still apply these principles and make students feel a bit more motivated by working in line with this. And Yeah, so this is something that has been triggering a lot of interest around the world. And the book is also available in Spanish, this book about the value creating student. How do you know if you do value creation pedagogy? Well, you need to ask yourself 2 questions. The first question is this: are my students expected to interact with someone outside their own group, teacher, class, or school, university? It's a yes/no question. And then the second question: are my students expected to try to create something of value for someone outside their own group, teacher, class, or school, or university? Yes, no. So you can basically answer yes to one of these 2 questions without that then being fully value creation pedagogy. For example, if you go on a study visit, you will interact with people in working life, but you will not be invited to create value to them. If you collect, we have charity, and you maybe you try to collect some money and give to a charity organization, you would create value for someone, but you would never meet those people that you create value for. So you could say yes to one of these 2 and not the other one. And my point is to say, let's try to answer yes to both of them. Then we get the strongest effects. It's not about changing your entire pedagogy. I keep needing to explain this to teachers. They are just adding a couple of drips or drops to what they are currently doing, and then the whole glass of water will change color, because these drops are very powerful. And over time, if you work like this, a new culture is established in class where students are constantly asking their teacher, for whom can we do this? Whatever we're going to do in this class or course, for whom can we do this? So that some value is created for an external stakeholder. And this then becomes a culture, a very strong culture, driven by teachers and students together. If we look at patterns when I have been studying this type of pedagogy, what is it that happens? Well, it is the emotional learning events that create these effects of developing entrepreneurial competencies. And this is a bit of a sketch to show you how this happens. So when we let students interact with the outside world, they develop their self-efficacy, initiative taking, and marketing skills. And this is how this is stylized quotes around how they think when this happens. When they get to create value for others, they develop passion, motivation, but they also develop subject matter knowledge. So if you have a chemistry course or chemistry teaching, they also become better at chemistry. And that is maybe not an entrepreneurial competence. So this can be used to strengthen the core of education, what happens in the core of our education systems. We also see a development on an identity level. I want to be more like this. I want to be a person who creates value for others. When they get to work in teams, they develop their self-insight. When they apply new knowledge in practice, they develop subject matter knowledge. When they experience uncertainty in the learning environment, they develop uncertainty tolerance and perseverance, which is 2 very crucial skills in society today. When they get feedback and support from external people, they develop their passion, their motivation, and also their self-efficacy. I could actually succeed in this. This is a very common surprise that we have seen in the data. So I try to, this comes from one of the articles I showed you in the beginning, a 2020 article, an impact study, an 8-year impact study, where we could basically see how these were the 4 most important emotional events: external interaction, teamwork, creating value for others, and feedback from external people. And this develops then something that I call here entrepreneurial passion, strong willingness to create value for others. And then we get a lot of different effects that are very much in demand in education. Self-directed learners who want to learn more and work harder, responsible learners who own the learning process, kind students who then trigger fewer conflicts in class, and then also students who develop personally from these emotional events and then develop their entrepreneurial competencies. Yeah, these effects are very strong. We see them again and again. And that's a very good news for educators and for students and for societies, I think. This is a little figure that I, based on my discussions with Sain and Professor Qureshi. Maybe I brought this in because I think it resonates with some of the discussions we've had in the Pakistani community of self-oriented versus oriented perspectives. And I think that adding value creation pedagogy adds to the right side here. We get others-oriented meaningfulness, we get a helping posture, we get a focus on creativity, co-creation, social entrepreneurship, pro-social motivation, and so on. And this figure is not exactly this figure, but there is an article from 2017 where I try to take on this challenge of neoliberalism in education. And I think it's an important issue. This is not to say that we should not have any self-oriented experiences. I think that has its place as well. What we want to do is to strike a balance between the two perspectives. This is a figure from a more recent paper, a very recent paper from this year, where I try to change people's perspectives on entrepreneurship education, because there is a lot of focus on competition, venture creation, and trying to build exclusive clubs of where students work with their own ideas. And I would like to change these perspectives. We can actually think differently as entrepreneurship trainers. We can focus more on value creation, on cooperating, on having action center stage. We can take a relational emphasis. We can work with pro-social motivation theory and teamwork, and we can have an inclusive treatment of everyone to become more entrepreneurial. I write about this in an article, which is also available on my blog, and it will end up as a book chapter in an anthology, an American anthology, due in late 2024. And also, yeah, this is one of my favorite songs. I don't know if you can hear it. It's Neil Young, and I'm playing it here. And this is a quote from that article, Imagine There's No Competition, where I paraphrase the good Neil Young and saying, maybe this song will soon stop. It's too long. So I paraphrase Neil Young and saying basically, the damage done when youths are made to believe that entrepreneurship is all about winning, competing, making money, and becoming a lone brave hero with great business ideas. I don't think this perspective is conducive to a lot of the values that we can inculcate in people in this domain, and especially when we add sustainability to the mix here. We do a lot of work on sustainable entrepreneurship at Chalmers. We try to define the concept, to define the differences from stereotypical classic entrepreneurship, and developing methodologies to develop more responsible entrepreneurs. So I think this is a crucial perspective. And of course, the attitudes of trainers, educators, and also investors will of course impact entrepreneurs' behaviors in these perspectives. So if we don't change as educators, how can we ever expect students to change or society to change into a more balanced position? Yep, that was part 2. A very quick presentation of that, but we only have an hour, so there is a lot of articles around if you want to read more about it, so that you can see this as an introduction, basically. In part 3, let's look at working life. imbalancing work and life, all work, no learning. And how do we go about with this problem? Well, I think it's a problem of not wanting to, not having the ability to change and to develop in line with what is going on in your in society more broadly. And so I think this is a problem of just creating the same kinds of value all over again, day after day.
Because we're raising the temperature slowly, he doesn't recognize the danger he's in. He just keeps going along with the changes in his surroundings. Eventually, we can turn up the burner to a deadly boil. He will just keep trying to adjust with it. By the time he realizes it's killing him, it's too late.
Yeah, as you can see, no frogs were injured in this video, just so that is said. I'm showing you this video to illustrate what happens with an organization if they don't change, if they just adjust to changes on a micro level and not fundamentally learning and taking new action. And we have a lot of organizations out there who have experienced this kind of inability to learn. We have Nokia, we have Compaq, we have Kodak, a classic example of a company who didn't adapt and learn from changing circumstances. A more recent example is Blockbuster Video. Polaroid was an example of this. We have an example in Sweden, Hasselblad, a famous camera brand that was the first camera to go to outer space. Yet I think they are less than 10 employees today. So how do we go about with this problem of not learning? Well, I think we need entrepreneurial employees to fix this problem. And what is an entrepreneurial employee? Well, it's an employee who creates new value for others through scientific learning or structured learning. So it's an employee who really tries to think in terms of how can we create value for our customers, for society in new ways. I've been working with entrepreneurial employees in the education sector quite a lot, and then it's about teachers. Entrepreneurial teachers who try to create value for their students in new ways through systematic learning on the job as teachers. Yes, I have a raised hand here, Sad.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the session so far. It's been very enjoyable to listen to you. Your work is very exciting.
What's with the sound?
Yeah.
Can you others hear Sad?
Yeah, they can hear me.
Yes, we can hear.
My question was, maybe you will come to it.
Hearing?
Can you hear it, Martin?
If someone else says something?
Can you hear us, Martin?
Let's see.
Hello?
Sorry, Sad.
Hello. Yes, we can hear. Yes.
Sahin, are you saying something too? Can I? So I can't hear
No,
any
it's all
of you,
right.
maybe.
It's all right. Thank you. It's all right. Carry on, please.
Oh, what is meant by scientific learning? There I see your question. Yeah. But you can hear me, Sad, right? Yeah, okay. So, good question. And I will come back to that soon. Let's pause that question for a little while and we come back to it. First, I would like to define what is an entrepreneurial employee. And this is the shorter version that you heard before. Create new value for others through scientific learning. But the longer version goes like this. Let employees be more entrepreneurial by caring and daring to take action, by experimenting to create new kinds of value for others, and by learning from the process in scientific ways. So let's unpack this a bit. Caring and daring, we call this agency with a research word, or we could call it taking action, taking emotional action, we could call this. An entrepreneurial employee needs to take initiative, to do stuff, to see if there is new value to be created out there. The entrepreneurial employee is looking for novelty, new kinds of value for others. This is not about routine value creation. producing the same products or services that we have produced for years and years and years. Here we want to focus on new ways to help people. It's still about value for others, because when you work, you do it. It's a job to cater to others' needs. That's why we are paid for it, because there is a value being created for others. And then it's also about learning from the process. And then in scientific ways, which we'll come to. But first, I would then like to construct to you, this is a model of what it means to be entrepreneurial that we have developed at Chalmers over the years. And we have described this model in a report we wrote to the European Commission, which you see up in the right corner here, the entrepreneurial employee in the public and private sector. What, why, how? This was the first publication where we presented this model of being entrepreneurial. So we have in the lower corner, we take action from our heart. We try to imagine something new. We try to create real value for others, and we then gather learning during the journey. This is what we mean by being entrepreneurial or becoming entrepreneurial in a broad sense. So what you don't see here, there is no mention of creating a venture. There is no mention of making a profit. We have deliberately excluded this from the model. And in the report, we try to operationalize a bit. What does this mean on a more concrete level? What does agency mean? Well, it means dedication, it means courage, and it means taking action. What does novelty mean? Well, it means about envisioning something new, but also claiming the new before others, because you will be critiqued. If you come with something new, you have to claim it. And then you also have to organize for the new to be created. Value for others. How do you create value for others? Well, you have to discuss with those others. You have to create the value for them and with them. And you have to feel empathy with others, with their needs, and listen in on their feedback. And then when you learn from this whole process, you need to analyze cognitively, but you also need to experiment, which is an action-oriented way to learn. And then you need to revise and persist after reflection on if, how, and why value was created. So this becomes a process with 4 corners, which you go through like this all the time and try to keep a balance. And now I'll show you a video on this that is more of a graphical illustration of this concept of being entrepreneurial. So that was the part about being entrepreneurial. But I saw that somebody raised their hand. Who was that? Bud.
Yes,
Can
Professor,
I
can you
hear
hear me?
No.
Can you hear me, Professor?
There is something about the sound here.
Let me
But
type the.
can you write your
Let me type.
question in the chat maybe? And then we, as soon as I finish my talk, I'll see if we can fix so that I can hear you again. It's funny that the sound disappeared. Why is novelty one of the cornerstones? Yeah, I mean, good question. So I would say, I mean, we put a lot of thinking in these four corners. What is a model of four corners where if you take away one of them, it is no longer entrepreneurial? And I think that novelty is by definition part of being entrepreneurial, because if we are, I mean, if we are, I often take the example of starting a taxi company. It's lovely if people can start a taxi company and deliver value to society. But it's not a new way to create value, to create a taxi company, because there are a lot of taxi companies out there, and yet another taxi company. I would rather categorize that as a small business. You start a new small business, whereas I wouldn't label that person an entrepreneur in the slightly more narrow sense of entrepreneurship. And this I would also relate it to my favorite definition of entrepreneurship comes from a French guy called Christian Bruyat. And he defines entrepreneurship as new value creation. In a relatively famous article from 2001. But yeah, let's not get stuck in it. That would be my quick answer, Bud. And but I mean, it's a great discussion. So let's see after this. Let's see, because now comes the question that Saad asked before on what I mean by scientific learning. So I wrote this book about the scientific teacher. It's in Swedish, but there is an English translation available at my blog, where and this is kind of this is my main research methodology that I've been using when I've been researching value creation pedagogy and many other things. It consists of 3 steps. First comes design, then comes take action, and last one is sample the impact. So the first step is what a small group of organizational developers. It could be teachers. I'm myself a teacher. We design a set of action-oriented tasks for many others to do. And then in the second step, they take action, and then they reflect upon how it went for them, how it worked for them. So I've been using, for example, in value creation pedagogy, I've been designing actions for other teachers to take. Ask your students, for whom could this knowledge be valuable? Which is part of the value creation pedagogy toolbox. And then they write to me and they said, oh, I tried this with my students and this is what happened. They were confused, or they were happy, or they were confused and then happy. And then I could follow the outcome of particular actions that other teachers were taking. And then after this is completed, every person reflects short written reflection and quantification around effects observed. And then in the third step, I can sample the impact of different actions taken by these people who were invited to try things out. And this third part of sampling comes from a method called experience sampling, which was championed about 50 years ago by a Czech professor called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He used this methodology to research what is now called flow theory, how humans become in a state of flow that was he discovered this through experience sampling. So this is a little bit inspired by that. And how can then this be used? Well, employees can be invited to work scientifically with their learning. So they work hypothesis-based. How do we test if our idea works in practice? This is in particular among teachers who want to try things out. Then they have to articulate what they want to try with their students. And they need to do this in a systematic way. Many people try the same ideas simultaneously. They need to document the effects in writing. So if you are a school, for example, with 50 teachers, all 50 teachers need to try the same things and reflect upon it in a written way. And then we will do a pragmatic search for patterns in those reflections. How does this work for me and my learners? And then they try to search for patterns, similarities, differences, insights. And they do this in a resilient way. Every year, they do more of what works and less of what doesn't seem to work. And over time, we will then get a better educational institution. So this is what I mean by scientific learning or systematic learning. The learning on the job that any teacher or any employee is doing every day is being systematized. And then we can be more entrepreneurial as an organization. This has also been called becoming a learning organization, which is another concept that is 50 years old, but very few people have been able to figure out how to build a scientific, a learning organization. And even fewer have been able to do it in a scientific way. So this methodology, we use a form that looks like this. I show it here on paper, which I do in the book, but we use a digital version of it. But this is for pedagogical reasons to explain to you. So we have a task title, we have a task description, maybe we put a deadline on it, and then we have a teacher reflection after the completed task. And as you can see further on here, we have an emotion judgment, we have a tagging of effects, and we have feedback from scientists or educational developers. And this then becomes if for each task that a teacher or an employee has tried out, they fill out a form like this, and then it becomes a little bit a very easy way to have a discussion around things that you try out at work, at your workplace. And if we do this in a digital way, it becomes almost as easy as SMS. So being scientific with your learning on the job in a way that makes it possible because teachers and many people in working life, they have little time to set off for reflection, for learning. But this then becomes a way to embed reflective learning into the working life of a lot of people. So we do it in digital, and this is the research tool that I've designed over the years. So the users, they get a task that they get to do and then reflect upon. And then they reflect in this little box here, and they tag their experience, they tag the emotional situation, how do they feel emotionally when they have done something. And then we can follow their reflections almost like social media. So we can see what people learn in real time, and I can go in and comment upon their learnings. This is from my students that I asked to reflect upon critical emotional events. And then we get out a lot of analytic tools where we can analyze what people have learned in a very time-efficient way. So this is kind of a way of working that we have designed over, I mean, it's taken us 13 years to design this and to make this work. And today it's used by a lot of people. I have a slide on that soon. Another way to explain it is this. So in the first step, we have people engaging in something that I call digital data-driven dialogue. So the dialogue is digital on a digital platform, but it's also data-driven because when we have had a dialogue like this for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, we can output a matrix of which tasks that led to which tags being tagged, and we get a heat map of which real life actions that led to which effects according to the people who took action. But the most interesting thing, I think, is the qualitative data analysis, which we do in Excel. So we download the reflections into Excel, and we can sort, we can search, we can analyze this in a very time-efficient way. And then comes the fourth step, which is actually pretty unexpected, maybe. That is when we invite people. The people who were invited to reflect, they are then also invited to analyze the data. So this becomes something that we call collective analysis or collegial analysis or co-analysis. So in this way, an organization consisting of, let's say, 50 teachers can become scientific without having a researcher from university taking care of all this, because this is something they can do themselves. And people do this. In Sweden, we have a lot of, I mean, we have around 200 schools who use this on a daily basis. This is an example from entrepreneurs that I've been working with and coaching, where I gave my students a number of challenges, I call them, or tasks. For example, talk to 100 S persons, and an S person is a significant stakeholder outside a university. And when they have talked to 100 people, they do a reflection, and then they tag their experience, and I can see that they become better at initiative taking, for example. They become more self-confident. If I ask them to pitch to a real investor, that also builds up their resource acquisition skills, as you can see here. So yeah, this is a way of doing research that we've been working with for a number of years, and it has spread around Sweden. It has also spread around, I would say, Northern Europe, and then we have a few people outside Northern Europe who use it. We have in Morocco, we have in Canada, in Japan, and in Brazil. Yeah, that's about it so far. Yeah, the last part, number 4. Why is work-life balance so difficult? And yeah, I'm approaching my finishing time as well here. So yeah, why is this so difficult? Then I would like to show you this figure here. The reason is basically this. Learning and value creation are like oil and water. They repel each other. Like this is a lava lamp with wax, which is a oil-based compound embedded in water. And when we look at education, we have traditional learning, the blue part, and then we have green bubbles of value creation experiences, such as apprenticeships, vocational education, we have project courses, we have master thesis work, we have entrepreneurship programs, etc., etc. Small bubbles of value creation as the exception to the norm. But we have a similar situation also in working life. In small, medium, and large companies, we have traditional business as usual as the blue part, and then which is kind of the value creation for others part, and then we have small bubbles of learning. Also here we have projects, we have spin-outs, we have innovation jams, we have mergers and acquisition units, we have venture units, we have a lot of different things that are bubbles of learning amid a sea of value creation or business as usual. And so learning and value creation are like oil and water. And I have been studying for more than a decade the small bubble phenomena that you can see here. And basically, I've tried to zoom in on these bubble phenomena where learning is mixed with value creation. And when zooming in, I can tell you it's something really beautiful that I can see. And what you see here is actually a video of something that we call a Rayleigh-Taylor instability. This is a phenomenon from the fluid dynamics, and I'm using it here to illustrate that when we try to mix learning with value creation, it becomes unstable. We get an instability, which is a problem. Sometimes we can add, this is oil and water, and we add a little magnet, and we make it turn around and rotate, so we can mechanically make oil and water mix like this. But what happens when we turn off the power to the magnet? Well, the oil and water is going to go back to their original state of separation. But what if there were a way to mix learning and value creation, just like a famous chef mixes oil and water when he does Béarnaise sauce or a Hollandaise sauce or some other sauce that tastes really well. What if there is a way to mix value creation and learning on a chemical level to get an emulsion? And yeah, that is my current research question. So we have level 1, the who cares level, only learning or only value creation. So learning with no value creation for others is a boring activity. And this we can see on our students. If they are bored, maybe it's because they don't have this balance. If we have value creation with no learning, we are in a dangerous situation if we're an organization, because we might become out of business, like Kodak or Blockbuster or other companies. If we have level 2, we are on the beginner level, where we work with value creation and learning, but they are separated from each other. We have a separate organization for the value creation part if we are an educational institution. We have a separate organization for the learning if we are a company. On the third level, I call it the intermediate level, where we have learning and value creation present at the same time, but it is an unstable situation, out of control situation. But they mix, at least temporarily. A classical situation of this kind is the projects. If we get project funding, we can do some really interesting stuff for a while, but as soon as the project funding runs out, we are back to our original state of level 2 or even level 1. Level 4, I would say this is some kind of an expert level, where we have constantly stirring of the oil and water. I see this in apprenticeship programs. I see this in vocational education institutions. They have magnets employed. They have people who are responsible for interacting with the outside world to connect the students to workplaces for internships and placements and so on. And then level 5. Is there a chemical emulsion situation where value creation and learning are fully integrated on a molecular chemical level in a stable form? Well, is this an utopia maybe? Can we never reach this state? That is my current question in my research. And this is the last part, and this is basically my current hypothesis on how this can be achieved. And so we need tensides. What is a tenside? Well, it's a surface active substance that reduces the surface tension between learning and value creation. And I think looking at how we work with this digital tool, LoopMe, where we give people challenges or action tasks. So if we have a value creating act in the form of a mandatory task that we ask people to do, and then we ask them to reflect upon it, then we ask them to articulate the learning that they experience when they have done something that is value creating. And then this becomes like an action reflection cycle, or reflection in action, which is a more or less 50 years old idea by Donald Schoen, David Kolb, and also a researcher called Gibbs. And I think this is something this is what we need to aim for, basically. And then we will get a good work-learn balance, regardless of if we are students, teachers, employees, or whoever we are in our family life, in our leisure time, wherever. And coming back to the 3 problems and the 3 solutions, I hope you now will agree with me that we can do something about meaningless school by mixing some value creation into the teacher, into the student's life of learning only. So that's a pedagogical contribution. We can help teachers who feel that they are not in control over their work by adding a scientific method where they get to learn learn in a more systematic way around how they can create new kinds of value for their students. And then the school leaders, they can, through the IT tool that I showed you, they can be able to see how their employees learn from trying new things out. So they get a better visibility as school leaders. And can then manage the schools better, the educational institutions. They can take better decisions around what seems to work, what doesn't seem to work for their employees and for their students. That's about it. This has been a 15-year journey. A lot of people have been involved in this. This has been action research all along the way. I mean, at vcplist.com, I write about the methodology, but if you also go to the book section, I have the book on value creation pedagogy, so you will find everything there. And I will stop sharing. And now let's see if I can hear anyone. Are you still there? Have you been able to hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, now I can hear you. So, Professor Qureshi, where are we time-wise? What do we have time for? Now I'm going to look at the reflections a bit. So we talked about novelty, we talked about scientific learning. Um, new versus old, repeating something that has been done already. Then I can ask you, now that you've seen this, do you think this? Oh, people have raised their hands. Let's invite Nadim to comment.
Yeah.
Or ask.
So thank you for your session. Actually, can you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I'm doing homeschooling for my 3 kids. So if I have to integrate the scientific way what you have taught at my home, so where I can learn more about this?
Yeah, I mean, on the blog you can learn about. I have the books there. The 2 books would be a good start, maybe, because they are written for teachers. So they are written in a not so scientific language. I try to explain for people. That could be a good start. I mean, giving your children action tasks that they can do and then reflect upon could be something you could try out. Maybe,
Okay.
yeah. But this is the question. I mean, if we want to have learning by doing, we have to answer the question, learning by doing what? What do we invite them to do in order to learn? And that's a quite difficult question for a lot of people. But if we don't ask ourselves that question, how are they ever going to learn in an action-oriented way? So I think it's an important question to ask ourselves. What would your kids have to do in order to learn what you want them to learn?
Normally, whatever I used to see outside or they used to see something, they used to ask me the question And normally we go to the books and search where it is written.
Yeah.
And maybe next time they can correlate. But this time I have learned a new thing from you, like, so whatever we are learning, we have to integrate in the life, and whether we can create some value for others or for ourselves also, like something we are doing day to day life. And
Yeah.
by learning some maths and physics, whether we can develop value for others first, and for us first, and then we can try for others. So this is the new
Yeah.
thing I have learned. So I have to integrate first at my level, and then I have to see that what I can do, and then I can inculcate the same thing to my kids. Yeah. Thank you.
If you get it to work, let me know.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always interested to follow up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Martin,
So,
I'd like to, I'd like to
yes.
share in just under 2 minutes, my experience with learning by doing. It's very common in software industry, and when I was working there as a culture manager, we launched a program in which we hired one or three students from seminaries, religious seminaries. So those guys, they usually come from poor backgrounds, and they cannot even they don't understand English, and their skills are not enough for them to be integrated economically in the society at large. The idea was that we will take them in, teach them, and then slowly enable them to create value and to get a job. That project was not a huge success, but we learned something, that it is possible and it's doable. And by saying that it was not a huge success, I mean it was a small success. So we were able to do it. And the model that I came across was, it's very famous. It's called OSF. O stands for on the job, and S stands for social, and F stands for formal. So the numbers that are thrown around is that 70% of learning happens on the job, and 20% happens from your peers uh, during social interactions, and 10% happens formally through instruction, right? And as a person who's an active homeschooler myself, that's what I try to follow for my children as well. And for everything that I want to teach them, I try to give them one intellectual exercise that can be completed in one sitting, one project require months to do, and one resource. And the resource is, the purpose of the resource is self-study. It could be a book, video, or a person. So I thought maybe you can look into that, something like that. And this is really common in software engineering companies, where we hire people and we give them tasks that they don't know how to do. So they're every day they're learning, and then they're doing, and those are actual real tasks. They create value, they earn money.
Please send me some material if you have on this. I haven't heard about it before, and I'm a learning nerd, so yeah, great.
Yeah, sure.
I learned something new as well today, so yeah, please,
Yeah, sure.
it
Yeah.
makes me curious. Yeah, thank you, Saad.
Yeah.
And who else? Fad, you were raising your hand before in Canada.
Yes, I was. I was about to type it, but thank you for pointing it out. So, yeah, I wanted to ask you one question, Professor. Uh, one of the things that one of the problems that we see in the professional world, and also uh, within the students, that they get stuck in learning and learning, and in this vicious cycle of learning, and then eventually they get very demotivated. They don't know how to apply that learning. They don't know how to create the value. And it's a dilemma, not just for the student, but for the professionals as well. So people, if you look at the professional between the age of 32 to 40, somewhere where the midlife crisis start happening, they also experience the same thing, which some of the students face when they are in school or in high school. So the question is that when we start learning something new, what are the practical guidelines, or what would you suggest that if somebody starts to learn something new, how can they apply, and how fast can they start creating the value?
I mean, this has been, I've helped a lot of teachers with this particular challenge that you are bringing up. And my experience is that sometimes maybe the teacher wants to think a little bit too much for their students. What maybe they could do is to invite their students to find answers to that question. Because if you have a class of 30 people and they are young, they are bright, they are fast in their minds, if you ask them to think about for whom this could be valuable, they can come up with a number of ideas. If you give them the chance, maybe not immediately, and maybe if they are not accustomed to thinking in these terms of who else can benefit from something, it will take, this is a habit that most people don't have at the earlier ages, and maybe also at university. Most students don't get this kind of questions. But if you establish that as a culture in an educational institution, the students will become better and better at thinking up answers to the question of for whom this knowledge could be valuable. So then the students will be able to find answers themselves instead of the teacher having to constantly work for the students and find these external people. So I think it's not a quick fix. It's a cultural thing. And I mean, on the front page of my thesis that I defended in 2016, I wrote basically that, is this a new educational philosophy? Question mark. I don't know if it is, but it has philosophical implications on teaching that go very, very deep. So my answer would be that this is a difficult question to answer. And if we never ask it, we will never be able to learn how to find answers to such a question. And this seems to be lacking in most places. I don't know. Do you see where I'm going here, Farad?
I do. So for the student, I understand, but on the other hand, I want to also know your thoughts on the professionals. So, for example, teachers or working professionals in corporations and other companies say if they want to learn something new, because at some point someone might reach a plateau and then say, okay, you know what, I don't know where my life is going. I want to learn something new, and then they see some new shining object, and they go towards learning that, and then they don't see the value in learning that for some time, and then they see another shiny object and then start running towards there, and then they turn into a vicious cycle. So I want to know the strategies of
Yeah.
not chasing the next shiny thing and then sticking on something and then finding the value. What would you suggest for that?
I mean, then I think for employees, it's the opposite challenge of not integrating a learning mindset enough into their daily work life. And I mean, Google is an example that often people bring up, where they have one day a week where they get to do new things that interest people. So I mean, if you have a corporate culture where people are not allowed to think in new ways around things, I mean, because this is the agency corner of the diamond model, taking emotional action. So if employees are not allowed to follow their heart, the situation that you talk about can happen. And I mean, in the report we wrote for the European Commission about entrepreneurial employees, we write a lot about the benefits for the organization of inviting their employees to be more entrepreneurial and to do maybe not one day a week, because many organizations cannot afford to set aside one day a week for learning for the employees. But at least you can do something. But there are a lot of benefits for the individuals, like you say, instead of getting stuck in life and thinking that you're in a dead end and so on. So yeah, that I don't know if I answer your question. I just reflect a bit around it, but yeah. Let's. I guess we are soon out of time here. Let me know. Professor Qureshi, if that happens, but until you say so, I take some more questions. Abdul, you've been raising your hand for a while.
There are also some
Yeah.
questions in chat, Martin.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Abdul.
Yeah. So I was just going through it, and it really gave me a perspective of have take a back foot. I mean, we are as an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm very much interested in solving some things, and and I also believe that money is not something that is the only thing that should be around, and that should be in the head for in the pursuit of creating some starts, or creating some value to the society. what i've what I'm struggling to understand the diamond that you presented with the novelty and everything. So instead of balancing it, why not convert it into a circle, and have cycles of I mean cycles of every every corner, right? So maybe like if I'm trying to um I'm trying to create a business, or I'm trying to initiate a startup. Why not? I'm struggling with the time. I mean, some of the time I need some time for for the initial task to complete. Some of the time I need to do the market research. Some of the time I need to develop something, and maybe I can dedicate some time to uh, uh, to some learning stuff, right? So I was thinking, why not create the circle out of it, and just revolve around that circle, and touch the points of these points the and touch these 4 points. Like I dedicate a day just an example. I dedicate a novelty. I have 5 working days, right? So I dedicate one day for the novelty, one day for this, for the one this. I mean, this will create some kind of balance, right? I mean, if I dedicate 1 hour or 2 hours a day for that, and just convert it into like a cycle, and I just visit every corner that you presented once a day, and that would be not I won't be able to I won't be in a position to create balance, but I would be in a position to managing it effectively. So what do you think about that? What are your thoughts about this thing?
I think that I mean I see myself as a co-creator, so I take ideas from everything I read, and then I reshape them into something new. So I think Abdul, you can take my model and you reshape it in the way that makes it work for you in your everyday, and then you send it back to me, and then I can learn from your and that goes for everyone here. I mean, all the models, everything that I've done are just my current hypothesis, the current version of my thinking. It's based on a lot of other people's thinking, which I have in turn transformed. And I mean that's how humanity develops. So Abdul, co-create. Take the model, do your version, let me know how it works and how it needs to be shaped to work for you. I think that would be my answer. It's a good question, you know. Models are simplifications, and how can we how can we develop that? So that would be my answer. I mean, I think. And if you could do something every day, I mean, in of those four corners, I mean, you would make progress. Yeah, I would say, yeah. But I think the heart needs to be part of it, because the things that we don't feel a lot for are the things that we don't have time for. So make sure that the agency corner is with you every day. That would be my thinking on what you just said. Yeah.
And what do I have the liberty to ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So yeah. So one more question is that you've presented something like uh, make yourself more of a person who can learn something by doing, right? And learn, and do you mean by learn from failures, or or do you mean by, learn from your experiences? I mean, where does your definition of, doing something, that's what I'm, want to understand.
Yeah. I think there is an article that I come to think of when you ask this, that basically says that entrepreneurs are extreme learners. They learn from successes, they learn from failures, they learn from customers, they learn from partners, they learn from friends, they learn from everything. So I would not want to single out one thing that they learn from. They learn from everything, and they learn cognitively, they learn emotionally, they learn by taking action. I'm very inspired by it's something called the tripartite division of mind, basically saying that we have cognition, we have affection, and we have something called conation. And we need to work with all those three. It's basically, we have actions, we have thoughts, and we have emotions. We need to learn from all those three things at the same time, I would say. So yeah, good point. Good question. So I'm going to take a couple of questions from the chat. Let's see, what have we here? Why does value creation at the personal level motivate students and teachers? So I mean, I read this question as why is this motivating? Why does this work? And I would say my answer to that question, I've been searching for answers to that question for a long time, but I think I found a number of answers in pro-social motivation theory. And I also think of it in terms of we are a social animal. We love to be with others, to do things for others, and we are inherently motivated by being with others and doing things with others and for others. So when you ask a person to do something for someone else, you are basically asking them to do something that is very, very close to the human nature. So I think we are, and this is something that is maybe a uniquely human aspect. We are creative, we are social, and we are. I've written about this in my book. So if I go to, because I think this is a really, really important question. So let me just say, where is that chapter? Let me find it so that I send you to the right place when I then say this is the one. Yeah. So I have a figure. Let's see. In this, in chapter 1 of my book about value creation pedagogy, I have a figure that looks like this. So we have handiness, we have social ability, and we have creativity. So these are the three main unique aspects of humans, which have propelled us into the most successful animal on the planet. So when we do something that is in line with this, we become motivated. It is in our inner nature to become motivated by that. And this is what I write. I write about these three strengths of humanity, of humans, in relation to what we do. So when we ask something to do something for someone else, we draw on their social ability, on their creativity, and on their handiness. That, I would say, is why we see these strong effects. And let's see, Ali had another question. Yeah. What else? There was another question, right? Why is new value creation better than old value creation? That's a good question. I'm not against routine value creation. There's a lot of value that has to be created all over again and again. I mean, we have taxi companies because people need a ride every now and then. So I don't think new value creation should take over. Most value that is created in society is actually routine value creation that has to be created every day, every week, every year. But the new part could maybe benefit from being more than just 1 or 2%. Maybe if we could get new value creation to be maybe 5% of society, that could be a way to get a better society. And also, I think new value creation for students represents a unique possibility to become more motivated, because many of our students are actually quite bored, and also employees. So if boredom is a problem that we experience, new value creation can fix that problem to some extent. That would be my answer. So I'm not saying that it's better. It's just it's good in a different way. What are the, Mood asks, what are the chances of being successful is if we deal with our idea in a humanitarian way? So I have a humanitarian view on entrepreneurship, Mood writes, and I think, I think I'm a humanist when it comes to entrepreneurship. I try to get us away from the classical neoliberal capitalistic ways of defining entrepreneurship into a more relational way of defining entrepreneurship. And I think if I look at entrepreneurship as a job, I think the job is not to get rich. The job is to create value for others. If you're good at your job, you might get rich, but your job is not to get rich. Your job is to do something for others. I think this is a misunderstanding that we have in society. We look at the really successful entrepreneurs and we see that they are rich, and then we somehow assume that the job of entrepreneurship is about becoming like them, becoming rich. They became rich because they helped a lot of people. And there's even a quote on that topic. If you want to make $1 million, help 1 million people. And then that comes back to the value flower I showed you before. I don't know if you noticed this. Let me show it again. Let's see, because there is a particular facet of it that I think is really important. Yeah, let's have a look at that. The centerpiece of this picture has a yin and yang figure. That means that I'm not putting either of these two perspectives ahead of the other. I think if you create value for others, you will get value yourself. If you want to get value for yourself, you have to do something for others. I just think that it's a more productive starting point to start in the value for others than to start in value for yourself. I don't know about Pakistan, but in Sweden, people tend to ask themselves, what's in it for me? I would like to maybe start with the questioning what's in it for others, because if I do something for others over and over again, I will have a better life myself too someday. So that's how I look at it from a humanitarian or humanistic point of view. I think if more people learned to have a perspective like that, they would fare better themselves, and we would have a more humanitarian society. I cannot prove that in any way, I guess, or I haven't thought about proving that. It's more of a philosophical perspective. What I can see is that this is not something that we are taught in schools or universities, at least not in Sweden. Maybe Pakistan is a different situation. I don't know. You would have to tell me. But I do see some differences when I listen to Professor Qureshi, to Sain, and others, that we can learn something from other cultures where I come from. Yeah, let's take a question from people who raise hand. Ikra, you've been raising your hand for a while.
Yes. Hello, Martin. First of all, I would like to thank you and your presentation. You have provided us just beautiful presentation. Thank you for that. And my question is, how can we effectively balance learning and value creation to ensure both contribute to success?
Both the learning and the value creation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the eternal question, I think. That's the question I'm struggling with every day. How can we balance these two? Because they are like oil and water. So this is a very difficult task of balancing the two. I mean, I meet a lot of teachers who say, "Wow, I really want to do this," and then yet they are unable to maintain a strong focus on learning, even though they want to. They are unable to maintain that focus because their everyday teaching tasks kind of take over. So I think we need to design organizations. I think management perspectives are very important here. We need to I mean the individual person, the individual student, the individual teacher can only do so much. We need to also look at the organizational structures because we have managers in place who can say what is important in our organizations, in our societies. Those are the ones who need to lead the way here. And I rarely get to speak to that kind of people. So, I mean, I am a practical person working on the ground with the students and the teachers who want to interact with me. And maybe one day they go up to their bosses and say, hey, we need to change. We need to strive for this balance. And I write in, I mean, I published this article about work-learn balance just recently. And I write in that article that maybe we haven't had a word for this, for the balance that we have been talking about today. So to answer your question, Ikra, I would say maybe a first start is to have a word for what we are aiming for. Because I haven't seen a word that puts the focus and emphasis on balance between learning and value creation before. So if we don't even have a word or a term for it, how can we strive towards something that we cannot even say? So maybe that's a start to say, okay, let's talk about this balance. That's a good start. And let's talk about this balance with the managers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I've learned a lot from your today's session, and please do share with your presentation in group.
Thank you, Ikra. Yes, I've sent my presentation to Professor Qureshi, and hopefully he can send, because maybe he has a list of all who is here today of emails, so you can get it that way. And then I also saw a question from a person from Cuba who said it can be difficult to get access to stuff. I mean, if you have been unable to get access to my material, you can always send me an email and I can answer. But I think Professor Qureshi can send it out. Yeah. Let's see. We have Thad who raises his hand.
It's Professor. I have some thoughts and I have a question. But I just want to comment on one thing here. And in my humble opinion, when you say the balance between value creation and learning, in my opinion, I think that's a wrong way to approach it. I think that the way you should approach it is it's not when you say we need to balance between the two things, then the underlying assumption is that you are focusing on one thing at a time. So you have to divide. Okay, how do I? So there's a famous thing going on that people say the work-life balance and there are other balances. When you say value creation versus learning, it means that people have to spend dedicated focus on one thing at a time. But I think that you can learn by creating value, or learning can be underneath the value creation rather than separating them out and trying to find the balance. So that's my perspective, and I can explain that. I don't want to take more time on that, but they're just my perspective, and I can expand on that as well. But the question that I wanted to ask you is, in terms of learning, if we take that as is, how do you think that people should learn? What are the effective ways? You talked about, people should be learning. There are three ways of learning, but how can we have that learning mindset, and how can we be effective learners?
Yeah, great, Fahad, and great that you brought this up, because I had a slide that I removed just before I started, and it looks like this. I would like us to have some kind of a sand style when it comes to, as employees, we have every week an hour where we get to develop our skills, or the way we get to really focus on our learning. Unfortunately, most people would have maybe, boulder style, cobble style, or in the best case, they have gravel style of learning. And I think, ideally, I would like us to strive towards where learning and value creation are on a molecular level, mixed on a molecular level. But I think, in some professions, this happens. We have a lot of informal learning happening in workplaces. You learn when you do stuff with your students, you learn. The problem is when that learning is not harvested in any way. It stays in the individual. So that is maybe why I want us to work in a more systematic way, where we learn more together, where we specify what we want to learn from when it comes to actions, so that we can see patterns in a more clear way. Because the informal learning only goes so far. It only takes each individual so far. If we want to reach further, we need to work together. We need to work together in a systematic way. Then we need to have managers who think that this is an important thing. They need to have methodologies. They need to have techniques that can facilitate this kind of learning. That's why I've spent a decade building an IT tool, because I think we need new tools to facilitate this, because the tools we have had so far haven't really done this. The learning organization, where is it? People send their employees to look into a video platform or something. That's not the kind of learning I'm looking at here. I'm looking at the action and emotion embedded learning that happens on the job, which is, as you say, more or less seamless in its connection to value creation, but it's still isolated. So yeah, this is an evasive concept, but it's a good question, Fad. Yeah, this is what I'm struggling with myself. So yeah, and this is the first hour we talked about it, where I've been involved. So there is much more to say, and there's much more to be done. And come back to me with your conceptualization that develops this. You get the same challenge as who was it who asked about the round circle? Yeah, come back with
Absolutely.
something further developed. I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fahad. Let's see. Did I miss any question? How can entrepreneurship schools in developing countries help students from vulnerable backgrounds, such as those in poverty or remote areas, to develop self-motivation and lifelong learning skills despite the challenges they face? It's a wonderful question. It's a question I feel a lot with. I had a project with a foundation in Mexico for a few years. They were the ones who translated the book on value creating students. Unfortunately, something happened there, so that project was terminated. I don't have a clue why, but they were using that book in segregated areas, in poor areas, in schools, and I think there is a potential here. So I cannot say that I know how it can be done, but I have a feeling that value creation pedagogy is particularly useful in poor areas, in remote areas, where we need to think differently, where we cannot just say, oh, go start a company, because maybe that's not even thinkable for many of them. Or maybe we have a lot of necessity entrepreneurship in poor areas. Can we get them into a more of an opportunity mindset where they look at emotional agency? What do they want? What value do they want to start or to create, these young people? And then we need maybe some frameworks for that. So yeah, I mean, I've also discussed this with Dita, who is at Warwick, but from Indonesia, and I feel that I get dragged into places where we have this situation of poverty or remote areas. So it happens also in Sweden. I mean, we have, relatively speaking, poor areas too. We have segregated areas, and people ask me to come there, and when they tell me what they do that works, there's a lot of similarities with value creation pedagogy. In fact, I have even written a chapter about this in the book. Let me share the link with you. Let's see, where is it? It's the last chapter in the book, Value Creation Pedagogy as Integration. I put it in the chat. It's not the final answer to the question. In fact, I think I have just gotten started with that question. I feel a lot for that question. And if somebody applies these ideas in poor areas, in segregated areas, in rural areas, remote areas, and if it ends up working, do let me know. That's what I would say. Yeah, I see.
Thank you.
I don't know. What more questions do we have? And let me know if you, I don't know your format. People are still here, so maybe you have other things on the program today, but until someone interrupts me, I see if I have some more questions. Real world examples with benefits of implementing this solution. Well, we have a lot of schools in Sweden, primary schools, secondary schools, where this idea has been implemented, more or less. I write about these examples in the book about value creation pedagogy. I've tried to write it as a very practical book. Unfortunately, some of the most practical chapters have not yet been translated. Chapters 4 and 5 are not yet translated. It's only because I haven't had the time. I have them AI translated, but I haven't kind of cleaned them. So maybe that is a message to me saying, why don't you put up those chapters? Because there we have a lot of practical examples. I have about 50 different examples in the book. So that is a practical example. When it comes to examples of working with designed action sampling, I have in the article, I've written a lot about examples as well, but not as much. Also in the book, which is on the other part of the blog, designed action sampling part. In that book, there's a lot of vignettes, it's called, examples that you can look at. So hopefully there will be a number of examples out there. Well, it's almost 7:45, and I think I'm gonna round off there. So, Professor Qureshi, thank you for inviting me.
I'm not sure if Dr. Shahid is in the session,
I see. Maybe he had to. Yeah.
but maybe the host can jump in here.
I think he might have just joined.
Oh yeah, there he is.
Hello, Martin and
Hello.
Good. Wonderful. I missed half of your lecture. I will have to listen to the recording. But wonderful. I'm back.
Great. I was just saying that I've answered a lot of questions and we had a good discussion. So I think I'm going to round off there and thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, wow. So you asked so many difficult questions. 1 hour and 45 minutes. They kept you busy. Wow. Wow. Zain, Martin, Rahman Azam, Abrar, Ali Junaid, Dr. Ali, Ani, Cuba.
I think, Dr. Shahid, we are having some audio issues. Sorry, we lost you there, Dr. Shahid.
Sorry?
Yes, the train is moving, I think.
Oh dear. Martin, perhaps we could then let you go.
So, Martin?
And yeah.
We got him back for a second, Martin. I think he's, yeah, he's having connection issues. I had a question, but I'll email you separately, Martin. I think it's fascinating. Yeah, and we'll take the conversation off this session. Might be a little bit more technical.
Yeah, great. But so thank you so much, and hope you have a continuing good evening or morning or wherever you are. Yeah.
Thank you ever so much,
can you
Martin.
Can you share your email, please?
Oh, of course. Of course. There you are. And I don't think I can share. Can I share the slides here? Let me try. Because then you will get them immediately. See if it's possible. It seems to work. Oh, you have them already. All right. I see.
That's great.
All right. So thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye, Martin. Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Martin.